So, Jeff, we got a lot of news and notes to talk about from 20 years ago. You guys were getting ready to move away from your weekly pay per view concept. You're going to a monthly pay per view concept. So, instead of every Wednesday for 2 hours and $10, we're going to go to like $30 once a month for 3 hours. And there's a lot of moving parts. You know, you guys have been on Fox Sports Net now. You're filming more in Orlando. You've sort of moved away from doing things at the old asylum at the fairgrounds in Nashville. And when you're trying to figure out, hey, what is the main event going to be of our first sort of mega show, our first big time 3 hour pay per view, and we land on Jeff Hardy and Jeff Jarrett. Why was that the no brainer for you and the crew at Victory Road?
Man, the shorter answer is Hardy's star power. There was a time in the 2000s when he was arguably the hottest babyface in the world. That fair enough to say, Connie? I mean, there were different spots, not consistently through the 2000s by any means, but he was a red hot babyface. And we just, it was a collective decision, but I certainly was leading the charge on it, that he was going to be our best option as a babyface, challenging for the title. It made a lot of sense.
Let's also mention that this relationship did not start off awesome. You know, it was a rocky start. We've talked about some of that in the archives where there were missed flights and, we're late and the bus is late. And, there's lots of questions about will he even be here? And so there's some challenges we're trying to work through. Did you ever feel like you needed a backup plan as you're heading towards this major 3 hour extravaganza?
Well, I think it comes with the job. It comes with the territory. It comes with the mindset that when you're leading a creative team, you better have plan B and C almost at all times, knowing you would rather not go to it. But with Jeff, he made one or two shows for us in the asylum days. And then there came a time when he said, yeah, I'm ready to go back to work. Now, hindsight's 2020. Me not understanding sobriety at all during this time would be an understatement. Just that, okay, what Jeff does on his time, just like I dealt with all the other talent and myself alone, including, is okay, what we do in our own time is our own deal. And so I had all the confidence in the world, and maybe a trait from my father, or I don't want to blame him, but just being a little naive, that I really probably didn't take. I was more the delusional optimist, or just wanting something worse than the reality is. I didn't really completely, and maybe I just turned a blind eye to what was really going on with his situation, and I'm not saying his home life, but what he was doing in his extracurricular activities. But he had given me his word. We go back to the mid 90s, and at this point we'd been friends 10 years. Jeff wanted to do it, said he'd be there, said he'd do it. Yes, he missed a few flights, missed a complete day of taping once, maybe twice. But we like I'd seen my dad do 1,000 times or more because of injuries or missed flights or whatever it may be. You have to figure out how you're going to get to the finish line.
So I want to ask you, when and this is going to be an uncomfortable question to ask, but I don't know another way to do it. Is this one of those deals where at times in the wrestling business, just as a business owner, as a guy who's just trying to get the match in the ring, is this one of those circumstances where it's like, hey, I don't know and I kind of don't want to know as long as he can do his job? Or am I looking at that the wrong way?
I saw the post on X, the something to wrestle with. I think it was like a quote from Bruce: "Just get the match in the ring."
Yes.
Yes, I've heard that. God Almighty, I don't know how many times. It kind of hit me on how many times you can drop different scenarios into that bucket. So, Conrad, what you just kind of framed, hell yes. I don't want to know. I don't care to know. It's none of my business. Let's just get this thing going. Again, to look on the other side of it was, we had made the move to Orlando. We had made the decision, the pay-per-view companies, how we looked at it, and, from our last weekly, how much runway did we want? Not just from a business point of view, but what's going to be the best Sunday for us to land on, that we were steering clear of, obviously, the WWE October and November, and I'm sure December factored in there, but trying to steer clear of the WWE pay-per-views and whatever boxing things or MMA things that may or may not have been going on. How are we going to land on that weekend? And once we got that weekend, then you get a main event. You kind of back book everything from there. So there was a multitude of challenges at this time. And like you just said, how can we get the best match for the box office attraction in the ring? And that was the mindset.
When do you think that changed? I don't think that mindset mentality exists today. I think today people make more decisions about, oh, what's in the best interest of the health of the performer, that sort of thing. But for years and years, it was always, hey, get the match in the ring. I mean, there's even a famous story that Meltzer tells about the British Bulldogs. Dynamite couldn't even walk to the ring,
Yeah.
but they got him out there so they could drop the tag belts. I mean, we've heard a bunch of stories like that. Even Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14,
Yep.
he was having some issues, and they got the match in the ring. That was what Vince's father had drilled into him, and then Vince drilled into Bruce. And we're seeing, and we're going to be talking about where, hey, we got the match in the ring. But I know that eventually, the attitude on that sort of thing would change. And I think when we started to see so much tragic news out of WWE, and you would see Vince McMahon on like HBO Real Sports and being faced with these hard questions about what responsibility do you accept, as when all of these wrestlers die prematurely. And we saw Vince's response. Thankfully, you were never in those crosshairs in an interview like that for TNA. And well, you didn't have near the number of tragedies on your watch in TNA that happened in WWE. But when do you remember that attitude seeming to shift about the way get the match in the ring may have evolved or changed over time?
Okay. Because I think we're not going to completely talk about apples to apples and oranges to oranges. If a guy's hurt, it depends on what all goes into that phrasing. Let's get the match in the ring. If a guy it depends on I guess you could say, the issue. I'll say this, that as I sit here today, headed toward the end of 2024, not just the wrestling business, but the world changed post pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it was. I mean, people weren't coming to work because of the COVID tests, because they might have it. And I'm not judging or voting or weighing in on that. It's just the world changed.
Caution became a more priority. Yeah.
A swab became the law.
Yeah.
That really changed. So I think the real stake in the ground is the pandemic is a huge dividing line. But I'll say that from, oh boy, because you can just kind of look at the Benoit tragedy, and there's more tragedies along the way, that over time the awareness of maybe, okay, a man's health, we need to be a lot more aware, because things, look, social media, pre-social media, things were so, it would be between promoter and talent and maybe one other person, and maybe the referee didn't even know. Sometimes it was blatantly obvious, but you kind of, it was just so much more closed and secretive, and hey, let's go work this deal. And like you gave the example of Dynamite, he had to literally walk to the ring and do almost no work, but he still did, which I'm not condoning at all. It's just as society has changed, as social media has impacted, the age of instantaneous information, as the industries become more and more and more open, Just I think it's been a much more gradual process of, hey man, that attitude of just get the match in the ring is probably not best for business, because it exposes not just liability, but maybe morally and ethically as well. I just think over time, society has changed, which has, moved into our business has changed.
Let's talk a little bit about.
I know that's a really good question. Do you have? I'm sitting there, my wheels are changing. When do you? And you've got, because you're doing all these pods. When do you think it changed?
This show, Victory Road 04. I think we started thinking about, and obviously a lot of people's opinion on addiction changes with experience.
Mm-hmm.
And people who have someone who's been through that starts to really understand that it really is a disease, as much as maybe they didn't once want to believe that. And I think that when we saw something publicly, it was sort of sobering as a fan to think, hey, this isn't all just funny haha. It was a reminder that these are real people. They're not really the Undertaker. Like, he doesn't have a driver's license that says the Undertaker. I mean, I guess the Ultimate Warrior did, but you get where I'm going. That's a character. This is a real person.
Yeah.
And when you saw that on display, that was just a couple months later is when we lost Eddie. And, a couple of years after that is when everything happened with Benoit. And I think everybody just got a lot more sensitive. I mean, this is the era where we started, we're not quite there yet, but we're just a few years away from starting to learn about CTE and all of our opinions on all that stuff changing. But I think this might have actually been the start of.
Now, hold on. This isn't the show that I think you're confusing the two. I think so, Conrad.
Okay.
The 04 Victory Road, me and
yeah. I mean the Victory Road from a few years later.
Yes.
That's
okay. We're on the exact same page. That show, or that set of circumstances, I don't want to say wildly misunderstood, but there were so many different opinions on that.
Yes.
That how did that happen? Or why did he go to the ring? Or wait, I just saw him 30 minutes before he went to the ring. Okay. I'll give that to you, Conrad. There was a lot of discussion about that Victory Road. Was that Victory Road? Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was. It was 09, I think.
Sting.